Hello, everybody. Welcome. It is Friday, December 2nd. Hey, we're coming up on the end of the year of 2022, and that's probably a good thing, don't you think? Welcome, my friends, to Working Out Loud. I am Dave Darrington, and this is a special episode where my friend Brian Childs and I are going to spend some time again, like always, talking about B2B software, education, and working out loud. Remember, if you're not learning and your customer's not learning, they're out there churning. You don't want that. In this modern world of B2B SaaS, what we want to do is really move fast, take names, whatever. All right. So today, without that further intro, welcome, Brian. Hey, it's been a while.
Yeah.
What are we here to talk about? Let's go ahead and introduce you. I'd like to frame this session up to all of our friends. Again, we're out there all the time talking, blogging, interacting out on Slack. You've got some big changes in your life and your career. So we're going to start off talking about that, and then we're going to get into a good
subject
today. So welcome. You got the floor,
yeah.
man.
Oh, hey, right on. Yeah, welcome everybody. A couple big changes. You know, it's like I was working with Thought Industries, and just recently I've gone full time at Learning Outcomes. So for those of you that have been like contributing to and reading and joining events with Learning Outcomes, I get to spend a lot more of my time on that. I'm really excited about it. And you know, still doing work with Thought Industries and other learning management providers. So there's a lot of opportunity out there. But yeah, that's one of the big changes. I think, you know, you mentioned like, hey, it's December and maybe that's a good thing that like 2022 is coming to an end. What a year. You know, I think that like there's a lot of the way I look at it is like, there's just a lot of opportunity in this industry right now. Like all this change represents to me a tremendous amount of opportunity when it comes to like helping programs think about their future. If it thinks that way, it's like there's been a lot of sort of dramatic changes in this, you know, the education space and just companies making really tough choices. And certainly on like the personal level, there's a lot of impacts to our friends and our colleagues, those kinds of things. But I also think it presents a lot of opportunity, because what that means is people are rethinking sort of how they should construct their organizations. What is the mission behind their organizations? What is it that they're trying to accomplish? Whatever that conversation comes up, like a dramatic reshuffling, there's an opportunity to have a seat at that table and define the future. So, you know, Learning Outcomes is really my opportunity, and hopefully I can give that opportunity to other people as well to join me, to kind of be in those conversations and help people think about the future.
That's amazing, Brian. Well, kudos to you. I think this is a really good strategic move. I want to learn more about your organization, but I think we can say openly that I've worked with you for years, know what you do, and I think we'll be collaborating going forward together on some big stuff. So
yeah, it's going to be fun. I think there's a lot of, like I say, you know, whenever there's big reshuffles like this, whenever there's any market forces that cause pressure, it's like I think that everybody should be thinking of what the world looks like on the other side of all of that, right?
Yeah.
So, and one of those things, you know, it's like maybe kind of the topic that, you know, we had talked about or framed up here is really around, like, I think one of the fundamental things here is around like considering engagement, you know, and what that means. What's the definition of engagement? And that's a conversation. I know that's a pretty big conversation, but I do think that's one underlying question for any organization, whether or not they're doing, you know, whatever content that they're developing, whether or not it's learning content or anything. It's like questioning, what can we do to improve what we have, right? And so, yeah, there's a whole lot there, but I think that's one of the key things that people should be thinking about right now.
Well, let's frame this up here, and let's kick off this. So I'm going to take solo feed. I'm going to put let's put some night driving music on. Ooh. All right. I was trying to find some ominous music here, but let's do it this way. Hey, everybody. Hey, our network. Hey, education people. Hey, customer success people. It's the end of 2022. Programs are getting cut. Headcount is getting cut. things are changing dramatically. You need to make the most of the resources you got. What are we talking about today? That's not scary enough music. Okay, I'm bringing
Yeah,
you
I feel
back.
like that's ominous. That was kind of like lounge music. That was like, hey everybody, let's talk.
We don't have
Let's talk
any.
about headcount reductions. Let's talk
talk
about reductions in force, everybody. All right.
Still gets attention. Okay, so all right, what I had to try. That's all I had in my thing. I
Oh,
couldn't
it's
find
good. That
anything.
was lounge. It was like a good setting.
No. So okay, so to your point, what we want to do today is talk about this engagement thing. I like in the conversations I have with you, Brian, one of the things I value in you, among other things, is the background you came in with at search engine optimization. I mean, you said, what is it, Moz? You spent time at. You have in our industry. Let's talk about the coolest thing that I see in our network. That means the people who are here right now, and we're all grouping together and trying to work together to make customer education a thing, a category. Among other things, you have this really good understanding of marketing and bringing people into the pipeline, that funnel, right? And it's really underneath all that is engagement. How do I get people to pay attention? How do I get people to look at my stuff? How do I bring them in? How then do I put them through a series of steps, a conveyor belt, if you will, and keep them engaged over time? I like this subject because, Brian, I was at Outreach last. And that at Outreach, it was all about engagement. It wasn't customer engagement at that point. That was sales engagement. How do I get people in? But this whole engagement world is about conversion funnels, drop-off rates. You know, if you think about, all right, I'm out there in the world on LinkedIn, somebody gets an idea and they come in and come to this, they find this event, this recording. What is out the other end? Who do we get out the other end of that, right? Maybe we have a 1% conversion rate or a 10% or 100%. I don't know, but we're trying to figure that out. And today we're going to talk a lot more about how we can really get our programs to be seen, visible, and get people engaged with them. Does that put it in a good way?
Yeah. I think, the thing I think is interesting is I can't remember who I was having this conversation with, but maybe 2 weeks ago or so, we were talking about how engagement or like how content production has this last mile problem, right? Where it's like build, so much attention is spent on like what is going to get built and how to decide on that. And then so you create it. And there tends to be in content production teams kind of like this, the measurement of success can sometimes turn into just like production rates. And so
wait. The measurement of success turns into production rate. So it's you give me a content feed of stuff that's coming out on a cadence.
Yeah, sure. I think this is pretty typical of like design teams, marketing teams, training teams. Sometimes you can be like, I've completed, I wanted to build this course or this bundle of courses or whatever. And so therefore like I've done it. And so that I'm like, my milestone is completion of production. And so there's a lot of, and usually we live in environments where it's like the amount of production that needs to take place is like huge, right? So you're like, I just need to burn that backlog down and get done with all those things. And so it's like, I need to get done with all these different tasks or with all this production activity, but it has a last mile problem and like a measurement problem that goes along with it, where it's like, okay, well, what is produced delivering the results? Because if people don't consume it, then they're not going to be able to have all the outcomes that like a learning program promises. Like you could say with this educational content or with support sites or with knowledge base, you're going to reduce tickets, or you're going to drive more adoption, or you're going to drive stickiness or like renewals or whatever. But it's like, if people aren't consuming it, you'll never get to those outcomes. And so it becomes this last mile problem of engagement, right? Where it's like, how do I drive people to actually come to my coursework or come to my pages? And so I think it's just a really important subject to talk about, in particular when you have pressure in the market, right? Because when there's pressure in the market, or there's something that's sort of like reducing your capacity or reducing the ability to deliver, well, then all of a sudden it's like, opening up that question of like, well, how are we getting people to these things? Could what if we wanted to achieve the same amount of growth that we are projecting, or do the exact same sort of thing, but we can't build anything else? What if we only had what we have right now? And I think a lot of us are in these situations where it's like, hey, I'm not going to get that headcount. I might actually have to lose headcount, or I might lose resources, or my budgets are lower. What am I going to do? And oftentimes it's, maybe rare in some cases to look in the rearview mirror and be like, okay, what do I got? What am I sitting on right now that's going to be the thing that I have to use to deliver that growth?
Okay, got it. Yeah, before I go any further, your microphone is clipping on your collar there, so it's a little scratchy.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, okay.
Just
Sorry
want to
about that.
bring attention to that. This is what we do.
Oh,
in
good.
live,
Okay,
live
yeah,
stuff.
good. I'll like hold this out a little bit. Appreciate it.
Perfect. Okay. So, yeah, I get that. It's all this stuff's happening to us, and we're squeezed, right? But if I'm hearing what you're saying, Brian, we're kind of have this build versus consume issue, which I know that if we give attribution, Donna Weber used to say a lot of this: if you build it, they won't come, right?
Yeah.
I get in this, it's a reverse Field of Dreams problem, where a lot of the times and actually this is where we're going to talk about strategy. I think strategically, one of the biggest problems I've always had, Brian, is, oh my God, I've got a team of people and all these people need to do something and we need to make all this content and we're on a schedule. And my manager is looking at me like, we got to get this done. And then, you know what? I've got tunnel vision. All I can see is building that content.
Right.
And then I forget the other half of my job, which is marketing that content.
Right.
So to your point, well, now what happens is now I've got to squeeze on my team so that content pipeline is smaller, right? The flow is reduced. But yeah, the thing I think you're talking about is we have this volume of content that we built. And now we need to think a little bit differently. One of the premises of customer education is on demand, one to many, doing more with less. And just yesterday, we published a C-Lab episode, and we talked about another side of this point, which was that, we've got a big problem in our market. We've got to be seen. We've got to be visible. We've got to be out there. We've got to be connecting and marketing too, and not just focus on build. It's not just a build game. So now, why don't we open that conversation up to the Field of Dreams, reverse Field of Dreams? What is our strategy? You had some good notes in here. I was looking through our notes. Can you talk about the battlefield scenario?
Yeah. So oftentimes when people want to talk about marketing and marketing funnels and driving engagement, it's like there's kind of like two different flavors of this conversation. One of them is tactics. So like, what's the best color? What's the best color for a button for a call to action or whatever, and there's that stuff. And it's like, that's a whole growth hacking kind of like conversation. And there's another conversation, which is more about like strategy, and it's like maybe more broad. And I tend to think that most people would benefit from really considering those broader levels. There's a saying that we used to have, which is like the most important strategic piece of information that you can have on a battlefield is understanding where you are. And think about that, where it's like you could have the best map of the competitive landscape that you operate in. It could tell you where everybody is and what their strengths and weaknesses are. And if you don't know where you are on that map, you can't direct any action. So like before you care about what everybody else is doing, you have to understand who you are and where you are. And so how does that translate to engagement and funnels is, think about like what you have right now. I think oftentimes because we have such a volume of production that we need to execute against, or we have expectations coming from an organization right now, these kinds of times in the market is a chance for us to just take a minute and be like, what we have right now is what we have. This is who we are, right? The castles in your mind that you're building and the inspiration and sort of like the imagination that's out there and the things that maybe you're committing to later on, 2023 plans or things like that. It's like those don't exist. Think about where you are right now and what you do. And so some components of that at a more tactical level are to go in and really make an assessment of like what's working. Another way of saying like who are you and where are you on the battlefield is asking, what is working right now? And to do that in a way where you don't find yourself being, led astray by the challenge of like small numbers or large numbers, where you could be like, oh, I get, there's 1,000 page visits or something like that, and like 600 of them go to this one site or whatever. It's like, well, what's the percent change? Are any of those growing? Are they all growing? Are they declining? Is it 600 now and it used to be 700? It's like, look at what's changing. Look at what you're actually known for and doing well with. I think that's the first thing that people can do to address their engagement in times where they might be feeling pressure, is to ask themselves, what is it that we are known for, and what is it that's actually performing? Because that will define the next step that you take. I think when people think of strategy, they often think like, oh, we're going to have this vision, it's going to be far out in the world. But again, on the battlefield, you need to know where you are, because where you are will define the options for the next step that you can take. And that's where we have to operate right now. It's like, what am I going to do next? Stop thinking about what the plans were that you had and think, what is the thing that I'm going to do next? I'd say that's the first step, is to go and do an assessment of like what actually is producing. Because from there, once you know what that is, then you can go and address like the paths into that content, right? So if we were to say like, I don't know, say there were like some, tax software or something, or accounting software, whatever. Like, let's say that we have coursework that's on that topic. And you go through and you look at all the different pieces of content that you have. You look at all the different things that you're trying to deliver on, and you're like, what we're really known for is, whatever, like this course for tax preparers on, like how to deal with inheritance problems or something, whatever, I'm using like a hypothetical. So if you do that, then what you can do is you can be like, all right, that's who we are. That's what we're known for. That's the thing that's actually growing. That actually produces a lot of like our inbound flow to our coursework. And it's like, and we want to double down on that. Now you can move upstream from it. You can move up your funnel and be like, what are all the different clicks that someone has to go through to get to that? And what if I could, instead of me building an entirely new program to drive growth, what if I just went through and improved like my click-through rates on the emails I send out, or the page, between the page that I have and like the CTA that's on that page? What if I could improve that flow by like 5%? Maybe I never need to build anything new. I could get all that growth just purely by like looking at my inbound funnel to the things that are working, and grow the flow that's inbound rather than try to grow new programs.
Okay. Do you mind if I take you back just
no, go for it.
Step and bring you back?
That was a lot. Yeah, it was a lot.
No, it was a lot. But what I'm trying to do is connect what I'm learning from the market. And I wanted to go back before you get into the leaky funnel area, which is what you're starting to talk about now.
Yeah.
Now we're talking about the funnel, but back to the strategic part. I really appreciate what you said there, because and let me reframe this. I talk to a lot of people like you do. Both of us are in this consultative advisory type play, where what I want to do, what you want to do, and what we want to do together as partners is to really help. Now we're talking about breaking the fourth wall. You, prospect, customer, person that's like us trying to deal with these problems. We want to help alleviate some of your pain in these moments of economic and corporate pressure. You're always getting pressured to build this strategy to stuff. It's like, I don't know how many times, Brian, I hear this. I'm sure you've heard this even in interviews. We want to hire somebody and have them figure all this stuff out for us.
Right.
About education. It's this amorphous mass of insanity. Nobody really truly understands education like those of us who are in there fighting the fight every day on the battlefield. Right. And now basically we have a general somewhere in, out of the theater of battle who's saying, hey, you need to go.
I can't wait for this. I can't wait for you to extend the analogy. I'm like, yeah, Dave, let's go.
Let's go. I don't know anything about military, but I've always
been all the ranks in between where we are.
Fascinating. You got supply, you got your, supply chain, all this stuff. No, like really what I'm trying to get to is that strategy that we all think about is macro and micro. And what you're talking about is a micro strategy. We've got to move. We've got to now, and the reality is we got all this content here. We don't have people. We can't do the same things we want to do. Now, in a tactical, strategic, in the moment kind of play, how do we pivot and roll, right? This is what we did in COVID. How do we pivot and roll when we were doing ILTs and everybody was butts in seats and traveling all over and having a good old time, to now the reality that, like we always knew, virtual instructor-led works and it saves money. And you know what? That's what we learned out of that is this is fine. This is fine. Now we're in a different play where we built this content. It's all there. It's not performant, or it's not working right. Or Adam Avramescu, again, I'll go back to one of the things he put in his book was this grid. Now think about an Eisenhower four-square kind of grid where you have two axes. One is how, like, volume, Google clicks, page views. How many times did you go to Brian's learning outcomes page and you looked at Brian's blog entry that talked about forecasting for your team? Okay. So that's, we're just relating it to you. And you realize that one was hot, right? People are going there every day. It's got hundreds of clicks. It is really cool. Okay. Well, how do I do? Okay. But there's another one in there, which was how to build, I don't know. I'm not going to make anything up because I can't. But that one's not performing. Why? Well, maybe your title was goofy. Maybe you didn't email out to your audience. Maybe you didn't talk about it on LinkedIn. I don't know. But so you're doing that micro strategic thing to now get yourself up to think about, all right, now we have this constellation of content.
Yeah.
We have now let's talk about the funnel.
Yeah.
Right. Here's your funnel. Here's your site. Here's all your stuff. What is this leaky funnel problem? Like now we're talking in marketing language, right?
Yeah. And I would say just to sort of like cap off this concept of like where you're talking about COVID and sort of the new reality that we live in, I think it's really salient, right? Like, I think that if we really think about where we are, we just had a massive over the course, like we have crossed the chasm, you know, it's like education solutions have become more mainstream because everybody is forced into it. So think of all the content that was out there that's built. What does that mean for you? That means you likely have even increased competition for things that where you might have been a first mover in some space, but you might have increased competition there. You know, it's like, I know there's another, like full of aviation stories, but it's like, you know, it's a hard lesson to learn, this lesson I'm going to describe, which is sometimes it's hard to figure out that the world has changed, right? And things like, oh, we've, you know, reduced, like headcount reductions are taking place, those kinds of things. Sometimes that's, you know, like an obvious transformation in the environment. But like when you start seeing those signals and that's happening, it's important to take note of it. And I'll use an example and I'll refer back to it. But like, you know, I was taking a flight from Oakland to LA one time. And I was like 35 minutes outside of Oakland, head south over the valley. And I had one of my engines quit. And it's like, there's this period of time when a dramatic change in your and an engine quitting is like a big deal, you know? And so it's like,
don't panic. We're not
well, but there's also this mental thing that you have to go through where you're like, this flight is no longer going to LA. Like you have to acknowledge it. It's like, I'm not trying to continue on the existing path that I am. I have to acknowledge it. Like the options of where I'm going to go have narrowed to whatever's right below me. And it's kind of that same situation that I recommend everybody doing right now is it's like, look, many people were probably like building and executing strategies that were based upon a previous world and think about how many organizations right now, I'm sure many of us go through this, right? But how many organizations right now are like, when are we going to start reducing the number of programs that we have to align to the headcount that we now have? It's that same concept where it's like, you have to do that.
We're not still going to maintain all this? Come on.
Yeah, we have to do it on your same team and be like, well, we were thinking of doing a certificate, but maybe that's just not maybe what we're trying to accomplish. We have to step back and be like, what's the point of what we're trying to accomplish? And can we accomplish that with the existing content that we have? Because if so, even if we're building new things or whatever, you know, it's like your plane is no longer going to LA. You know, it's like you got to think about where you are right now and make decisions based upon that, possibly. And if so, when you start doing that assessment, that's where you get into things where it's like, what's the leaky funnel? What's the leaky funnel that goes into whatever it is that's working right now? Because if I can improve that, I might be able to exceed the results of what I thought I'd be able to do by building new content, right? Just because there's headcount reductions, just because there's pressure on your teams, does not mean that growth can't happen, because it's likely that if you haven't looked at sort of the inbound flows into your
Mm.
content and really done an assessment on that, and forget like the attribution stuff and making it complicated, but really just like raw numbers or basic numbers flowing in, it's possible that you could achieve pretty significant growth purely by doing minor changes to what you have. And as you mentioned, like if you go through and imagine like almost everything that you do on your computer or on your phone, and it's like mind-boggling to think about this, but almost literally everything that you do when you're looking at a screen is part of some marketing or sales funnel. We are completely immersed in a world. We're fish in a sea of advertisements. We're fish in like a sea of clicks. We can't even see it anymore because we exist within it. So imagine trying to break through to somebody, to anybody, on like getting them to take some kind of action. I want you to come and take a look at my course. Like imagine the wall you have to climb over for people's attention to get them to do it, and how minor the little things can be that can drive them away from it. How many emails do you get from like sales outreach people on a daily basis through your business, through your like professional account or your professional email, where you just bulk, remove, and delete all of those subject
Except
lines.
for you,
I'll
go create a
go,
video.
yeah, I'm actually
and you
going
double down on that stuff.
I'm actually digging into it because it's fun to look at. But like,
it's fun.
think of every single title, every single header, every single body text, every single CTA that you have, every single button is a chance for someone to depart your funnel. So it's like when you see, these numbers don't have to be really complicated. Attribution is 100% a thing. There's multi-touch, like all of that is real. But like, if you just want to go and swing at some fixes, you can do simple things like how many people arrive on a page versus how many people click on a button. If you have 1,000 unique users per month, right, visitors per month arriving on a page, and you only have, like 50 people clicking on your CTA, like imagine the drop off of the total addressable market that you have for whatever you're doing when you lose 95% of the people that come through that page, right? You should ask yourself, if I get 1,000 and I only get 50 on the bottom end of that, then like somewhere between the page loading and the CTA is an opportunity to turn that 50 into 70 or 100. And if you can say that like, well, I get 20,000 people to my website overall and only 1,000 of them been this page, well, what does that mean? Move up the funnel and be like, okay, well, where might I put the link to this page so that I can capture more of those 20,000? And you can just work your way back up your funnels with using that kind of math, that very basic math, to just be like, there's something that I can fix here to drive more traffic to my page and allow me to get more engagement, so that the downstream impact of what I'm doing is actually like potential having the kind of value drive, or having kind of impact on value that you're promising with your program.
Okay, so I want to respond to this and again put it into perspective.
Is my mic bouncing around real quick?
No, it's doing better now.
You're
really excited.
Hold on to my mic.
I'm really excited. No, it's been perfect. So Brian, I think the thing that is really salient here and really important to bring out is the meta behind all of what you're talking about. Is that, look, as customer education people, we're not just educators. What I mean by that is, like, think about someone who has arrived from an L&D type role and is now a practitioner for customer education. And you've been part of a team, you built this organization up, you've got 10, 15 people, 2022, December, you got a notice, we don't call them ping slips anymore. Somebody got a text from home and you're no longer employed. That's our world. Oh God. But you have limited resources, you have limited time, you have a lot of content. What I've seen, like I want to bring out this story, is I've been at several or more than several companies now and working in education capacity. And always when I arrive, there's a volume or a bolus of content, right? And at that time or now, after, let's say now I have half of my team where I had 20 people, I have 10. I can't make more content. Everybody's like, make content. But I've always been saying it's not just more, it's the quality of what we've got. It's how is it performing? And that's a different play. It's a different way of thinking that we're not trained to do, right? Marketing people are. So that's that entree into, that's that connection where we want to be friends with our marketing team and learn how to do this kind of, it's kind of demand gen, right? You've got the concept of an A/B test, which is for the same content. Let's say, Brian, you're my instructional designer and you made a module, and that module, we advertised it as something really boring.com, something really boring title. Okay. It's not being picked up. So now what we're doing is, as a team or individually, sitting down and looking at that map of all of our content, pulling some numbers and doing some spot checks. If you use any LMS platform, you usually can get some information and correlate that with what's coming out of Google Analytics and see, okay, that's a page. Is it open to the universe? It is. How many clicks are there? Good. Take that data, merge that with your LMS data. What are people, how are they engaging with that content internally? Now we're starting to get into the measurement, right? So what I want to talk about next, or I want for us to talk about, is what are those actual things that we should be looking at? And then how do we play with that to actually get a result, an outcome, a learning outcome?
Yeah. Nice plug. I think something to note in here too, and I mentioned before, is it's like, this doesn't have to be like rocket science, particularly if you're not doing these activities really right now. And a lot of people, I think a lot of programs sort of don't spend a lot of time looking broadly at what's working and asking yourself what's working and looking at things over time. There's a couple little things that I would recommend doing associated with this. First off is, like, before closing out sort of the leaky funnel kind of conversation, first thing is, like, look at moving averages, right? So it's really, if you get a graph or you get some kind of chart, histogram, line graph, whatever, and you just look at like month over month, week over week, whatever, it's really helpful to look at a moving average. Take the last three periods of time, 3 months, 3 weeks, whatever, and smooth out what you have to be able to identify some of those trends. Because it's like, a lot of people don't look at moving averages, and moving averages help spot those trends and be like, oh, this is going up over time, or this is trending down over time, that sometimes just like a regular sort of trend line won't capture. Another thing is I really recommend trying to frame the improvements that you make in as, like, try to get it down to a binary. Try to make a hypothesis that when you want to change things, that you're trying to change something in where it's either a yes or a no. And I know that seems kind of hard, but you can boil things down to yes, no factors. So for example, if we were to be like, look, we get 1,000 people this page, only 50 click on the CTA. Let's, I don't know, move that CTA to the top of the page, right? So what's the hypothesis there? The hypothesis is a binary that I believe that moving this button to the top of the page will result in an improvement. So if you can turn things into binaries where you're testing like basic changes and not trying to test too much, it'll make it a little bit easier. This is another lesson I learned from aviation, right? So it's like, an aviation lesson is like, when things start going wrong, don't make it any worse by throwing a bunch of switches. Just be like, slow down, like, slow down and figure out what's actually broken, because otherwise you might be like, oh, we need to change the URL, we need to change the button, and we want to change the button color, we want to change the title. Pick one and be like, does this change? Ideally, you'll then have enough volume to these pages that you could see even small differences in a week's time, that you'd be able to determine whether or not those changes take place. So make your hypothesis as binary as possible, and then make those changes, and try not to throw too many levers at once. But that, again, those are just some recommendations that I'd have. When it comes to
what, I found something here that this is from a presentation we gave a while back. I'm like trying to find some artifacts that will help people understand. This is like a way to show your value. This was coming from something that Adam had done, where you're talking about your running average, and you want to do that over time, but you also want to be able to show the value versus discoverability. That we call this a discoverability matrix, which will show how things are. But if you actually bang that up against time too, and show that time weighted average month over month, or quarter over quarter or quarters over quarters, then you can start showing this data and how things move over time, which is really cool. And one of the things that I like to do is pull out results. And here's a document where you're seeing, here's the areas where I'm having negative views, here's positive views. This is not hard to do. So I just wanted to actually give you kind of like a frame up of, I didn't mean to do that. Let's turn that one off. I just wanted to give you a frame up of something that you could visually see and our people can see on how to do.
Yeah.
Sorry,
I'm putting another link in the comments here as well. So I read this article that the content fire triangle, and it's kind of a silly thing, but whatever. It's like this concept of being like, look, you can have something exist, or you can create content that can exist, but then like, is it discoverable? Exactly to that point. It's like, to what degree is it discoverable? Can you improve the discoverability? And by discoverability, it means like, you know, a typical example of this would be the old header versus footer, right? Like so many academy programs, it's like you build all this stuff and then best you can do is get put in the footer, right? Like how many people are stuck in the footer? And you can be like, look, maybe if what we really want to do is we want to drive this, how about put me up in like the resources page? Like how about, and again, if you put it into a binary test, imagine what the request is here. It's not, I want to be in the header and I deserve to be in the header. The request is, I would like to test whether or not putting this link in the header will drive traffic to this page by X amount, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like all you're asking for. This is also another thing. This is a marketing. I used to have a marketing agency, and this is like a marketing agency trick. Because inevitably, you know, somebody in the organization is going to be like, I think it should be this way, and somebody else thinks it should be this other way, and you might have your own opinion as a consultant. And it's like, what's the best answer to that? It's like, well, let's try it out. Like, let's figure out which one of these is the best one. Let's start with my idea first. But either way,
it's like, science.
Yeah, it's like, let's put it in the header and see if that changes. That will help with discoverability, right? Because people are in that header and they're going to be like, oh, I can see it and I can see the words up there. You know, so it's like discoverability is a huge first step. If people can't find what you've built, you're never going to get them to actually engage all the way down.
Yeah, I think, Brian, the thing I want to, again, reiterate for all of us is that this is a different kind of thinking. This is thinking like a marketing person. We have to do this. You have to do this. I compel you to do this. Slow down, think strategically, look at what you've got, figure out what you could press on. It's basically, you've got this a canvas to play with. And yeah, some of the content may need to be refreshed, but you can automate a lot of this stuff and get a lot more people engaging with your platform. And to be frank, Brian, I think this is the next big push in customer education, to be able to build, like, what is my SEO for education? How do I actually turn up that volume knob? How do I get people to go to the right material at the right time for this canvas, this database of incredible stuff that I've got? And you're pulling people out in the signal and noise, you're knowing what to measure. But now you're coming into this language of A/B testing, and this is a little scary, isn't it?
I don't know. I think it's just about like optimization. You know, like in marketing, we have this like kind of, you know, search engine optimization, or like there's this concept of like conversion optimization. And honestly, I think, you know, having a product marketing function now and seeing the similarities between what customer education teams typically have to accomplish versus what a product marketing team has to accomplish, it's like there's a huge amount of overlap between those. So it's like, it's not really that hard, you know, it's not that volume that far from the tree to say that like some of these marketing behaviors are actually right in there, because the content that gets produced by training programs is hugely valuable, particularly at like the top of the funnel. I mean, there's like great top of the funnel assets, video stuff. My God, it's great. So, you know, you should be thinking in a time where there's pressure. Again, it's like, what's the opportunity? Think about the opportunities in front of you rather than the constraints that are in front of you. What's the opportunity? The opportunity is like, well, maybe I don't need to build new stuff. Maybe what I can do is I can achieve all that same growth by just actually going and reviewing what I already have. And sure, maybe you go in there and there's not a lot there, or there's things that have to be constructed. But it's like, I would say don't think about like the future that you were building for yourself. Don't walk down the same bridge that you were trying to build in early 2022. Be like, all right, let's take a second here and decide, does this flight go to LA anymore, or are we just going to have to get down where we are? And it's like, you probably got to get down where you are and figure out what that is. And it's, there could be a lot of opportunity that's right around there. You might see things that have, if you look at moving averages or you look at percent changes, you might see things that are actually like helping define what your position is in the market. And maybe you have an opinion about it, but it's like, guess what? You fielded a bunch of content. Look at what actually you built, and don't go by your own opinion, but let the data speak to it. It's like, if you're seeing upticks in the consumption of something, you might want to be the company known for, or the program known for X, but you might actually be the company known for Y. So you would see that within the data of your existing content. And then again, what do? You go and you can optimize some of those funnels, and you can be like, yeah, you know what? Turns out we're all about Y and not about X. And that's our jam. And so we dig into that and we just use what we have and promote the crap out of it. So befriend your demand gen team. That's all I can say. Go to your demand gen team.
Yeah, this is where, Brian, I'm not challenging you at all. I want to go deeper. I want to learn more, because when you say make friends with your demand gen team, and other times I've caught myself saying make friends with your data science team. There's a call to action for our market. Again, I'm defining our market for customer education as, we are not just a learning person sitting at a desk pumping out content.
Right.
We're not that. We are not. What we are is this. We're a strategic function, a strategic executive function that's part of your corporate topology.
Totally.
Like partially in customer success, partially one foot in marketing. And you and I are trying to help under our market understand is that this stuff is both difficult because it's new for the first time for many people, but not difficult because these are standard plays that marketing teams have done forever. Slow down, right? Think about what you're doing.
And I would say that like the thing that is shockingly new, I think many people within the customer education space, and certainly like from a product marketing space, I feel this as well. But like, what's maybe shockingly new, at least in like SaaS organizations, is like this profound, surprising recognition of how the customer, despite what people say in most companies, the customer is not the unifying attribute that brings all of those teams together. So when I say like befriend your demand gen team, befriend your whatever, it's almost as if like customer education, like product marketing, represents the voice of customer to some degree. I am trying to like help the customer find their way through our application or through the value that our application is providing. And shockingly, so many programs, so many companies don't have the linear path or the path that customer is trying to follow as the North Star and the bridge that they've built their entire organizations around. And so what we find ourselves doing is we find ourselves coming in, and maybe we're like a paratrooper. We land in the middle of this organization and we got to like grab, from other parts of the organization. I think we are disruptive because I think naturally our programs are somewhat disruptive in a lot of cases, at least for like new programs. I think the programs can be really disruptive because what we're doing is we're trying to like realign the skeletal structure of a SaaS organization around a customer and say the customer journey is the thing that like all of us, demand gen on one side, sales on one side, success on one side, onboarding on the other side, like all of us contribute to this conveyor belt of helping a person move from unknowing prospect to qualified prospect to customer seeing value. That part, if you look at the bow tie, where it's like you move a customer down the bow tie.
Yeah.
The middle of the bow tie is an insane place in most organizations where it's like when you dig into the middle of that bow tie and like try to find a path through, it's really hard. So it's like we are these agents of change. And I think that's actually sort of what the future looks like for these SaaS organizations is maybe it's a big market disruption, whatever. But I really do think that if we were to look at SaaS organizations the way that they exist right now, and we would reimagine them and not just be like, there's a product organization, there's a marketing organization, and these are, there's C-suite and that structure. If we really thought about it, what customer education programs find themselves in is they find themselves in this like sort of empty space between a bunch of silos, and it's really enlightening to see that, like, guess what, that's where our customer is. Our customer in many cases is down in that dark space between the silos that have been produced, because the silos are not built for them, they're built for the organization to create whatever it is that they're creating. So I think that, like, there is a transformation that's taking place, and I know this is sort of like off the topic of engagement, but I think it's sort of like fundamentally about, like, how do we contribute ourselves to helping a person find value within the tools that are being provided to them. And we all, we work for a tool provider or a service provider in some way. So how do I empower a person who's going to be using that tool to get value from it? And that should be a linear path based upon that customer's experience. And, I think that we live in that world, and it's about helping that transformation take place. And I do think that those kinds of things are the difference between companies that are really successful versus those are not.
Okay. I love it, man. I think what we've opened up is the space of, okay, this is complex, but it's not. These are things that you can do, but you may not know where to start. One of the things that I will do first is, all right, let's promote your website. Can you talk to me a little bit more about Learning Outcomes and where you're coming from? What is it like? These conversations are a part of what your DNA is, as they are mine, and we collaborate together. I'll talk a little bit more about my program and how it interleaves into yours and how we can collaborate together. But can you tell me more about Learning Outcomes? Where are you going right now? How can people connect with you, Brian, and start that journey?
Yeah. I mean, the contact link up in the top right corner is probably the best place to go. You can fill that out, or you can always like hit me up on LinkedIn is another way to do it as well. Oh, you're gonna fill it out? You're gonna make a real time. Show us how it's done.
I'm showing you it works. You've done really well.
Okay. Yeah. So, I think that going to the contact us page is really like a good way to go, or go to LinkedIn. So what is Learning Outcomes? Learning Outcomes is strategic learning services, right? And it's also community. So I'm a huge fan of, getting really practical information into the hands of practitioners and people that are trying to build these programs. But when you think about strategic learning services, there's kind of like, there's kind of two pieces to this. It's about bringing experts to bear for the problem set that's in this industry. Providers of solutions, so like your LMS providers and your service providers, and them, it's like they need help from experts. Their customers need help. Customers ask them like, hey, I'm buying your tool, how do I use it? Right? So it's like there's a lot of interesting conversations that are taking place through Learning Outcomes about helping those programs provide strategic advisory services. And then there's the strategic advisory services themselves. So it's like, if you're a program and you want to just get help with something, you want like a fractional expert to help you out. You're thinking of hiring a learning professional. You're a manager that wants to upskill. You have a program that you're trying to launch, a certificate program, or you're trying to do monetization or whatever, and you just need somebody to talk to help you through that. Learning Outcomes, that's where we're going to be playing a role, is that we're going to be a place where you can go to just get that strategic help, something that's going to work with your schedule and that's on demand. So, I'm really excited about it. I'm really excited to help connect the experience that's in our industry with the people that want that experience. I think that's been, when I was building programs, that was a real challenge for me. I needed to have a red phone. I needed to be like, I need to talk to somebody. I don't like, we do so much. It takes so long to build these programs. And we, it's like, we kind of wander through the same dark forests that other people have wandered through. And there's really no reason for that. There's people that know how to build certificate programs. There's people that know how to build monetization. There's people that know how to build measurements. There's people that can help architect a program. So it's like, those are the kinds of things where it's like, you don't need to do that alone. And Learning Outcomes is really there to help you get connected with people who are going to provide that insight, so you can move forward. You can move forward with confidence and faster.
Yeah. And if you don't mind, I want to make this a little outspoken that we work together a lot.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I'm really optimistic about is our interaction going forward and how we as entities can work together. I'm going to show the program that I've got. Again,
Yeah.
you okay? You okay with this?
Oh, hey, yeah, of course.
This is part of why I'm here. So let's do the. Oh, what am I doing here? I want to share my screen. There
I'm
it
gonna
is.
fill out your contact form now. Now I'm gonna go do that. I'm gonna be a.
Are you going to do my
I'm gonna,
contact
yeah,
form?
I'm gonna go do it. I'm gonna go become like an MQL somewhere.
So in a formalized context, Brian, I'm really excited about what you're doing, because what you're doing interleaves very well with what we're doing at Service Rocket. Reach out, talk to Brian, and if you want to go deeper as well, the two of us can collaborate. The program that we have at Service Rocket is that customer education as a service model. What we can offer customers are not just advisory strategic work like Brian you're doing too. We could actually get down into the weeds and build. And one of the things that both of us are out there to do right now is, look, like I say here, customer education requires a dramatically new way of thinking. It is not just about hiring an instructional designer and making content. Brian, that's what you've said today. What you and others that work with you and work with me are doing is really trying to figure out how we focus on value and build the content, and actually, but slow down to speed up. Think about strategic.
Yeah.
We do as well, and you're going to see more of us collaborating together on how do we break things down. You folks, we want to break down this wall and understand the value that's locked behind the content that we already have. Then we want to build new strategic plays that help your customers understand and get more value out of your platform. And there's all these things that Brian and I can talk about. Again, I'm not going to do a full pitch, but we are collaborating together. You will see both of us out there talking together, but hey, reach out, talk to Brian, get these conversations going. Brian, I'm really excited about your new Vista for learning outcomes.
Yeah.
Tell me more. You also have CE beers and other things.
Oh yeah.
Between us.
Yeah, CE beers is great. If people aren't familiar with it, or it feels like it's too like, oh, it seems like, I don't know, if like happy hour event. It's like the most chill, it's the most chill group. Yeah, so if you go to learning outcomes, you click on the events tab up there, CE beers. It's just this recurring thing, so it'll always be on that page. That's just a monthly happy hour where, it's nice because there's a couple regulars. There's some really great talent that shows up.
I show
there
up all the time.
yeah, and it's like they're just casual conversations. Usually, the first 10, 15 minutes or whatever, everybody's just kind of like chit-chatting about what they're doing. But we try to have a topic, or we try to do activities in there that are like, how do we measure stuff? Or I think the last time it was like, what represents like a trained customer? Like, how do you measure that? Like, what does that mean? And that was like 45 minutes of conversation. It was awesome. And then also on these events, we have a lot of webinars that are coming up. So like, I'm really excited about this one with Courtney. Yeah, just
Courtney.
coming up this month. It's like, this is aligned with this topic of like 2023 planning. Like, what are you going to do with the reduced budget? Like, how are you going to drive that growth? And so Courtney has some frameworks that she uses at HubSpot to help get alignment with executives, to basically be like kind of similar to what I've been talking about, which is like, how do you focus the attention? And then if you go down further, it's like you got Sandra and Evan in early January, where we're going to be talking more about this like content build decision-making process. So we recently had one of those with Peter and Chelsea. And if you didn't get to that one, hit me up and I can send you the link to it. It was a great conversation. Both of them had some really great tips and tricks. This is going to be focusing a little bit more on the like, specifically like, what type of content should I make? Not just how do I create a backlog in the process of putting it all together, but it's like, once I have that backlog and I decide like, here's the topics that I want to cover, how do I do that? And I think both Sandra and Evan are awesome resources with this. So yeah, but join us at CE Beers. It's super fun. It's just kind of like, grab a beer or a kombucha or whatever, and just hang out.
Your drink of choice.
Yeah. And, you can bounce in for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever, say hi and leave, we try not to get too wasted like in the old days, but I blame Adam. I mean, if I'm going to say so, it's like Adam. When Adam showed up all the time, it's like Adam is like this pro at making like strong drinks, and it was just like, oh, let's all make Adam's drink. And I think he introduced me like the paper plane, which is like four shots in one drink, and so it doesn't get too sloppy anymore. It's fun.
Well, here's an idea for you. Maybe we should take that upscale and all of us have like a more formal session where we have one of those cocktail making parties.
Oh, dude, absolutely. I mean, we
cool.
could absolutely. I love that idea. We could absolutely do like a cocktail of choice, or like a beer of choice kind of thing. Do like Christmas stouts or something like that. Yeah, I think it's a great idea. Anything we can do to like, I'm super open. Anybody wants to do anything with CE beers, like hit me up, and I'm game to try new stuff.
All right. Well, I think we've hit a good natural breaking point. Once again, Brian, thank you so much for joining us. The important thing, the salient thing that we want to talk about is there's many of us out there that are all angling on the same thing. Brian and I are aligned. We work together. We're just saying this out loud. We work together a lot. And go visit Brian at learningoutcomes.com. Of course, come visit us as well. You'll be seeing us interact a lot online and sharing content on different sites. C-Lab's also in the mix. You've seen Brian on C-Lab before. So come over, hang out there. We're all doing the same. We're all focusing on the same thing, trying to bring the best minds and the best breed content and thinking to the market. So Brian, once again, thanks for everything. Let's go grab a coffee here soon and chat some more offline. But welcome to the network in a new capacity. Congrats on your move.
Yeah,
and let's bring in an amazing 2023 where we have no COVID, we have no economic recession. We actually get to the point of building and restoring or going to the next level of customer education.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm really excited. Thanks for the opportunity to chat, Dave, as always. And if anybody wants to hit me up, you can always find me on LinkedIn or go to learning-outcomes.com and say hi there. You can go to the contact page.
There you go.
Yeah, cheers.
All right, cheers, everybody. And with that, thanks again for joining. Get out there, build your programs. Come talk to us. We're out here every day fighting the good fight for you. Cheers.
See ya.